A forest of skyscrapers, each with a unique architectural twist, has risen up in Panama City, Panama. Fueled by growing revenue from the Panama Canal and an exploding banking industry, Panama's economic growth is on pace to outpace any nation in Latin America. The pouring of concrete and hammering of nails seems to never let up. The building boom of the past 15 years has, people say, slowed a bit, but is far from over, with new banks to house the wealth and apartment buildings rising up to house the wealthy. But hiding in the shadows of these testaments to prosperity is a nightmare.
I see many people muerta because the U.S. Army atacaron sin piedad a la población civil.
Roberto Eisenman was editor of the independent La Prensa newspaper. It was destroyed, and Eisenman and his family forced into exile by Manuel Noriega.
When I look back, I think to myself, I have really no right to be alive. I really have. The things I did, and the things I did, the people I was doing it against, I really have no right to be alive.
Fellow citizens, last night I ordered U.S. military forces to Panama.
It has been 30 years since Panama was invaded. Their very souls were violated, they say, by a foreign army.
I've got 2 more down the road.
I have no higher obligation than to safeguard the lives of American citizens. And that is why I directed our armed forces to protect the lives of American citizens in Panama and to bring General Noriega to justice in the United States.
The purpose of the invasion was to take down this man, Manuel Noriega. A member of Panama's military, he had been in the pocket of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency.
I had a meeting that Noriega was present, and I criticized something. He would come back to me and say, "Why are you criticizing? Everything I do, the U.S. agrees with."
Addicted to power, Noriega seized control of the country, running it from the background until 1988, when he deposed the figurehead president. That same year, 2 U.S. federal courts charged him with drug trafficking and money laundering. Even Noriega's CIA connections could no longer protect him. The U.S. government had had enough. Diplomatic efforts and street protests to get rid of him had failed. Dubbed Operation Just Cause, the first shots were fired on December 20th, 1989. When the invasion began, troops really didn't have very far to go. Panama was home to the U.S. military's Southern Command, and these dilapidated buildings behind me here were once the living quarters for U.S. personnel. Yet most of the 26,000 combat troops came from bases in the United States. The 82nd Airborne Infantry Divisions, Marines, Navy SEALs. The force was overwhelming.
Was it necessary? Was the invasion necessary?
Well, we tend to think, there was one guy they were looking for. They could have done it a little less destructively. But Monday morning quarterbacking is quite easy. I was scared that Noriega would go into the mountains and become some sort of a hero. But I had this discussion with friends of mine, and one of them said, listen, he's going to run like hell the first bomb. And that's what happened. He ran like hell.
Noriega was captured, tried, and convicted on drug charges. He served time in the U.S., France, and Panama before his death. His military was, in a matter of days, neutralized. Today, no military exists in Panama. What happened 30 years ago has left a hole in the hearts of Panamanians that, to this day, has not been filled.
Well, no matter how sympathetic you might be to the invader, the fact that your country had to be invaded to return to democracy is a wound in your national psyche. I got together with some friends and we asked a writer to start writing the history of that that period of trauma in the country. And when we went through the 3rd draft, we gave up because we're too close to it. There was no way we could be objective enough to produce a book of real history.
Juan Planells is chairman of the Truth Commission.
It seems as if, in many instances, that part of Panamanian history has been swept under the carpet.
That is exactly what happened. Still, you have some people that don't want to face the complete story of the invasion, including those consequences.
The most painful part of the story was the loss of life. Trinidad Iola's husband was a pilot in Noriega's defense force. His airbase was one of the first places targeted by U.S. soldiers. She never saw him alive again.
Un día muchas familias quedaron rotas en este país. Muchos no volvimos a ver a nuestro esposo regresar a su casa. Muchos no volvieron a ver a sus hijos, a sus madres. Es un dolor todavía que llevamos permanente en el corazón.
To this day, no one knows for sure how many Panamanians lost their lives. The numbers vary wildly from the hundreds to the thousands.
Do you have a firm grasp yet on the number of victims?
250 are completely proved. We have a complete group of documents for each of those victims with their certificates.
Established 3 years ago, it is the job of Juan Planells' Truth Commission to get answers, to bring closure to families whose loved ones died, but whose bodies were never identified. At the commission offices, commission member Jose Sosa shows us the files for 16 victims they are hoping to identify.
Y bueno, vamos a hacer ese llamado a la ciudadanía para que nos ayude. Van a venir aquí, van a ver la foto, van a poder reconocer si es posible, ¿no? Pero les decía que hay una cantidad de personas carbonizadas que no van a poder ser reconocidas por fotos porque son cenizas.
Memory fades, too. After 30 years, details become more sketchy. It has to have made your work at least a bit more difficult.
That is correct. That's something that we are facing. That's why we are in a hurry now. Some of the people already disappeared, people that could testify about things that happened.
The commission has until next July to finish its work and present its final report.
Well, I feel that we will comply with what we were asked for, and that in a way we try to give back to these people that suffer some relief to their feelings.
For Planells, the document they produced should, he says, be a reminder that a peaceful solution should have been given more time to work.
All the leaders in opposition in Panama, when they were asked, they say that in no way they asked for the invasion. And even some important figures in the North American policy also said same thing, that it was not necessary, and that there were a lot of ways to face that without jumping into an invasion. For me, the Venezuelan case is very similar, and everybody's trying to do and find all the different ways to avoid violence as a solution to problems.
There are certainly similarities between Panama and Venezuela, but there is no U.S. military presence in Venezuela, and there's no Panama Canal to ensure stays open.
Well, we're looking at Venezuela today. I mean, there we are. What's the solution in Venezuela? Well, I hesitate to say an invasion. I don't think that that's possibly the way to go. But the people that are there suffering in those jails and being tortured and so forth, it's hard to tell them to be patient. Besides, there's another ingredient, and that was that most Panamanians, I was against the invasion, by the way, and criticized acidly by a lot of my friends. But most Panamanians said, the U.S. put Noriega there. It's their obligation to take him out. That's not the Venezuelan situation at all.
The emotional and physical pain and suffering, the street protests going on in Venezuela, have certainly stirred ugly memories here in Panama. Memories suppressed for 30 years. But the economic recovery has been remarkable. It began almost immediately after Noriega was removed.
The economists, our Panamanian economists, said it'll take us 20 years just to get back where we were before this happened. And it took exactly 2 years. The difference, I think, was that nobody knows or nobody knew how much Panamanian money was overseas, running away from the dictatorship and the instability in Panama. And as soon as democracy came back, all of that money came right back, and the rebuilding of the country was immediate.
Panama is poised to become one of the wealthiest countries in Latin America, but it is far from perfect. With the cost of housing and real estate out of reach in the city, many Panamanians are moving 30, 40 miles away. New communities are being born along the Pan American Highway, but that's created a traffic nightmare. The new and biggest international player now doing business in Panama may be part of the solution. Because of the massive growth and development in Panama City, most Panamanians can't afford to live there. So the Chinese and the Panamanians have come up with a plan to build a bullet train from the border with Costa Rica all the way to Panama City, crossing the Panama Canal right there behind me. Right now, it's just in the talking stages. Improving education and addressing the needs of the poor are the priority. The International Monetary Fund estimates 13% of the country's 4 million people live in poverty.
Yeah, we have two Panamas. We have the first world Panama and we have the fourth world Panama, and we have to bring that fourth world Panama way up.
The Chorrillo neighborhood, a Noriega stronghold, was destroyed during the invasion. It has, Ernesto Hayes says, been left to rot.
La destrucción de la sociedad panameña fue a tal grado que elevó los grados de delincuencia, de violencia, de pandillas, la corrupción.
Victor has a little fruit stand near Panama City's Old Town. He shows us pictures of his family. He has to feed them on the $10 to $20 a day he says he makes.
La economía, no hay negocio, no hay venta, nada. Todo caro. No hay plata. La economía está por el piso. No tenemos plata. Eso es lo que no tengo. Trabajo para comer. Soy humilde, pobre.
A few blocks away, young men are loading a truck with goods to be shipped. It's a rare good day for Gabriel Ortiz.
Por lo menos antes, para decirle que antes hacía yo 3 viajes por semana. Ahora estoy haciendo 1 por semana.
Along the waterfront, vendors sell ice cream and trinkets to tourists. Nearby, the fish market is stocked with the daily catch. Seafood is a bargain in Panama, but still a luxury for people like Victor and Gabriel. What happened 30 years ago is of little consequence to them, never crosses their minds. Why should it? It is for most Panamanians a dark period in their history. They buried it, moved on, and embraced building a new Panama.